So, namaste everyone. Mm, I welcome all of you to today's basic course on Satipatthana Sutta. So, I invite our Satipatthana master, Mangesh sir. Welcome, sir.
Yeah.
And without wasting much time, I hand over this program to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. And I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Yes.
Okay. So from the last classes, we have been studying the foundation of awareness, Satipatthana. And in the last session, we have covered the study of Vedana or feelings. And we have seen, starting from this course, that we begin to cultivate our awareness of the body. And we begin to cultivate the awareness of the body by beginning with the awareness of our breathing. And when we are a little bit settled in our practice of counting the breathing, following the breathing, and focusing the mind, we try to deepen our awareness of the physical body, and we become aware of the body as it is. Then we try to cultivate awareness in the different postures of the body, like walking, standing, sitting, lying down, like that. And then we extend the awareness to what is called the activities of the body. We have seen the various activities of the body. And then we cultivate the awareness of the various organs of the body, which we call scanning. And then we cultivate the awareness of the elements which makes up our body. And then we extend our awareness to the, or we reflect upon, or we meditate on the 9 decaying stages of the corpse. So we have seen that from the very concrete body, then our mind is settled, our mind is more concentrated, our mind is more focused, our mind is not running after sensual pleasures, our mind is not seeking pleasures. When we have achieved certain level of awareness of body, we begin to cultivate what is called the awareness of the feelings and sensations, which is called the Vedananusati. So Vedananusati basically is about cultivating awareness of the feelings. So there are 2 kinds of feelings, based on body and based on mind. Okay, and all that we feel are further can be classified as pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neutral feelings. So we can say pleasant bodily feelings, painful bodily feelings, and neutral bodily feelings. Likewise, we can say pleasant mental feelings, painful mental feelings, and the neutral mental feelings. So the 6 feelings we experience, and we become aware of the feelings, and we become aware of the quality of feeling that arise in our mind. And we do not pursue joy. The joy is an outcome or the side effect, as it were, of our concentrated, focused mind. We experience tremendous amount of joy, because when our mind is getting concentrated, when our mind is becoming very flexible, we experience certain kind of joy. And we are going to see how that joy arises in the sections to come. But our aim is not to pursue any feeling. Okay, we just have to observe the feelings as they are. The word here is as they are, here and now. So the feelings arise and the feelings pass away, appear and cease. So also, when we are cultivating awareness of body and Vedana feelings, we have to bear in this mind this characteristic of feelings, that they appear and they disappear, they arise and they pass away. So with this brief recapitulation of what we have done in terms of the study of the 2 areas or the 2 domains of Satipatthana, the body and the Vedana, today we are going to look at the awareness of mind. And as you might have noticed, as we go deep into the discussions and study, we see that we have been offered very less description. That doesn't mean that it's not important. It means that we have achieved in our experiences certain amount of depth by which we are capable of becoming aware of the mind. So here is a very contradictory, paradoxical statement that you all have to bear in mind: mindfulness of mind, isn't it? How do we cultivate awareness of awareness, isn't it? Because mind is basically to be aware, and volumes have been written about my mind. What is mind? How does it operates? What are the various levels of minds? What are the various models of minds, and so on and so forth. It's not easy to understand mind. It is not easy to become aware of mind, isn't it? It's like an eye. Eye sees everything, but it doesn't see itself, isn't it? The eye sees the entire world, but it's not able to see itself. Just like a hand, it can catch anything, but it cannot catch itself, isn't it? Just like this hand, it can grab this and that, but it cannot catch itself. The eye sees the entire world, but the eye cannot see itself. So what is the nature of consciousness? What is the nature of mind? What is the nature of chitta? How do we become aware of awareness? How do we become aware of something which is nothing but awareness or mind? This is a paradoxical question, isn't it? So if we are asked what is the mind, the question is, we cannot answer it, but we all know what is the mind. Because of mind, we experience everything. Because of mind, we can see the world outside. Because of the mind, we can hear. Because of mind, we can taste. Everything happens because of the awareness. But if we begin to ask what is that awareness that creates all this experience around us, is a very difficult question. As I said, that the hand trying to grab itself. The eye that can see the world cannot see itself. So as the Buddha says, that the mind is the origin of everything. All our experiences are mediated by our mind. And in the past classes, we have seen the various levels of mind, isn't it? The sixth consciousness we have seen. The consciousness related to our sensory organs. The consciousness that brings all this various consciousness together and creates what is called the objects of mind, the Dhamma. We have seen that. And then we can go into much more deeper discussion, but that is not going to be helpful today. But maybe in the future classes, when we study another suttas like Yogacara Sutta, we can look at the various models of mind and various levels of mind that we can see. But that is not our topic today. Just to keep you informed that according to the Yogacara philosophy, there are like 8 levels of consciousness, the 6 levels of consciousness associated with our senses. Okay. The 7th is what is called the manas, which creates the duality of me and them, duality of subject and object, and the base of all the experience, all the consciousness is called alaya consciousness, alaya vidyan. It's like a storehouse of the consciousness where everything is sort of, to use the word, recorded. And very beautiful sort of examples are given as to how we can understand alaya vidyan, but that's not our topic. I'm just, telling you that understanding mind is not easy. Understanding mind is not an easy task. It's a difficult task. As difficult as it is, like grabbing the hand, itself, the hand itself grabbing itself, or the eye able to see itself. It's that difficult. But our difficulties are, to a great extent, are reduced when we practice meditation. When we cultivate the satipatthana, we come to a stage where our mind becomes very, very concentrated, very focused, and we are going to look at the various characteristics of our minds. So suffice here is to say that to be aware of the mind is itself a great opportunity to practice. So how do we cultivate the awareness of mind? So the last discussion that we had on Vedana, as I told you, that if we have pleasant feelings, if our feelings are pleasurable, then our mind runs after it. Our minds become passionate. Our mind want to have it. Our mind want to crave for it, run after it. And that characteristic of a mind to become passionate or run after the sensual pleasures, the pleasure created by senses, is called raga. I told you the technical word and you can write it down, raga. Raga is a tendency of mind to indulge into the sensual objects. So anything that our senses and our mind consciousness find it pleasurable, we engage there blindly. That is called passions. Neurotic desire. Sometimes those desire attachment becomes so neurotic that we find it very difficult to break those, that attachment towards something which we find pleasant. So that is called raga. If our feelings are painful, if coming in contact with some people or coming in contact with some ideas, coming in contact with some sense object, if our feelings are painful, then what our mind tends to do, it tries to push it. It tries to destroy it. It tries to, what we can say, get irritated by it. In the Buddhist parlance, it is called aversion or dosa, dvesha. Okay, so when the unpleasant feelings arise, it gives rise to what is called the dosa. So raga means also lobha, means also indulgent into sensuality, and dvesa means hatred, irritation, or pushing away. Okay, so this thing happened. And sometimes we have neutral feelings. Neutral feelings, when they have no awareness, when we have no awareness and the feelings are neutral, they make us stupid. They make us have that kind of an idiotic consciousness where we are not able to see the way it is. And that is that the Buddha called ignorance. That is what the Buddha called avidya or moha. So please, please, please keep these three words in mind: raga, dosa, and moha. And they are coming into being based on the Vedana or feelings of the pleasant feeling, the painful feeling, and the neutral feeling. So when we practice Satipatthana, we see that there is a natural connection between all these practices. The more our breath becomes subtle, the more settled is our body. We experience the body very, very, we have the pleasant sensation in the body. We have sometimes our body just calms down. Our body is calm, our mind is calm, and we experience a very different level of feelings. And then we also don't pursue the feelings. We don't get attached to any feelings. They are just the byproduct of the practice that we do. So now let me read. I'm going to read, and then I'm going to clarify to you what is the awareness of mind, or what is called the Chittanupassana, or how to be aware of the awareness itself, how to be aware of the mind. It's a difficult task. It's like trying to grab the hand, our own hand. We cannot. It's like it's an eye trying to see itself. Okay, so let me read, and we will clarify as we go on. So the mind. And 8, O monks, how does a monk observe the mind as it is? Here, O monks, a monk with passion, he knows the mind is with passion. Without passion, he knows the mind is without passion. With aversion, he knows the mind is with aversion. Without aversion, he knows the mind is without aversion. With delusion, he knows the mind is with delusion. Without delusion, he knows the mind is without delusion. See, that's how we cultivate the awareness of mind. And the key word, as it is true with body, Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana, to observe the mind as it is. We don't add anything to it. We observe, we become mindful of the mind as it is. Right here, at that moment, we observe the mind as it is. And how do we become aware of the mind? So when we know that in our mind there is passion, we are aware that there is a passion in my mind. So sometimes our minds are full of passions. Sometimes our minds are full of sensualities. Sometimes our mind is craving, running after the sensual pleasures. It is completely indulging into the sensuality. That time we are aware that my mind has passion. Sometimes our mind is without passion. So when our mind is without passion, we know, we are aware that my mind is without passion. So when our mind has raga, we know that my mind is having raga. When my mind is not having raga, in the technical term called araga, detachment. So we are aware that our minds are detached. When our minds are full of aversion, we are aware that my mind is now having aversion. If our mind is without our aversion, adoso, then we are aware that my mind is without aversion. When our mind is full of delusion, confused mind, unstable mind, we are aware that my mind is unstable. We don't do anything about it. We are just aware that my mind is confused, that my mind has gone astray. My mind has gone hocus pocus. Okay. But when your mind is full of wisdom or understanding without delusion, then we are aware that my mind is now full of awakening. Okay. So when we meditate, when we meditate in our tradition that has been taught by Dhyanacharya Nagajiva, it's a very systematic way by which we can cultivate our meditation, Shunya meditation, by cultivating the awareness of body, by cultivating awareness of Vedana, and now we are cultivating the awareness of the mind itself. So when we become very much stable in our meditation, when we practice for some time, maybe sometimes 30-40 minutes, then our mind becomes very subtle, and we can observe the mind as it is. When we see that the passion is there, we are aware that passion is there. When the dispassion is there, we are aware that now my mind is dispassionate. When the aversion is there, dvesh is there, anger is there, we are aware that these qualities of mind are there. When they are not there, we are aware that they are not there. When our minds are confused, stupid, idiotic, we are aware that our minds are confused, cloudy. When our minds are clear, when our minds are no longer confused, not deluded, then we are aware that our minds are not deluded. Very important. So that's why, I request you to write down the words I tell you, because they help you in the practice. The Buddha was a very meticulous teacher. Even after these 2,550 years, we can still have that path by which we can experience the same awakening that the Buddha had. That's why we have the confidence in the teacher, because if we practice the way he has taught us, we are sure to liberate our minds. The Buddha says that if you want to become a great person, if you want to contribute to peace and prosperity, that's of course a great person who contributes to the peace and prosperity. Your mind should be free. It should not be attached anywhere. And what is the way by which you can free your mind? By practicing Satipatthana. Very simple formula. So, raga, dosa, moha, and araga, adosa, amoha. Just observe whether these characteristics are present in you or not. Don't do anything. Just witness. If your mind is full of aversion, don't just create more aversion. Little bit of irritation is there. It comes and passes away. Arises and passes away. Very key phrase in the Satipatthana Sutta. Arises and passes away. Whatever arises passes away. That is what the Buddha taught. Whatever arises has to pass away. Without that principle, the things cannot, nothing can arise. Because of the change, everything is possible. Because of the change, we are here. The change is so important. If there was no change, if the things were permanent, nothing could come into existence. Nothing whatsoever could come into existence. Anicca. So keep in mind this characteristics of everything that arises and passes away. Same with raga, dosa, moha. Whatever arises, passes away. Don't get attached to anything. Just keep on observing. Just keep on being mindful. Now, let me read further. When the mind is in focus, he knows the mind is in focus. When the mind is loose, he knows that the mind is loose. So we can bring our mindfulness. We can see our mind, whether it's focused or whether it's loose, scattered. When we are sitting in meditation, we can begin to note whether our mind is focused or our mind is loose, our mind is distracted, scattered. When the mind is expanded, that he knows the mind is expanded. So sometimes, our mind has a tendency naturally to expand. Because our mind is basically limitless. It has no boundaries. It is boundless. And I'm going to talk about it, boundless mind and, the mind having boundaries. By nature, our minds are expansive. But because of this delusion, this raga, dosa, and moha, our minds become very, very much what is called contracted. Okay, so when the mind is expanded, he knows the mind is expanded. When the mind is contracted, he knows that the mind is contracted. When the mind is surpassed, he knows that the mind is surpassed. When the mind is unsurpassed, he knows that the mind is unsurpassed. Now, this is a very technical sort of analysis here, and I'm not going to go much into that. That, the Buddha talked about a chitta which dwells in the repetitive patterns, and the mind that has broken that repetitive patterns. Okay, so two kinds of tendencies of mind. It either we are so much conditioned by habit energy that it goes on repeating the cyclic nature of the mind. Same thing happening again and again and again. And through our wisdom, when we cut that cycle, we are breaking that cyclic nature of the mind. Very psychological, but please try to understand it. That this mundane mind and the surpassed mind, the mind of the enlightened ones, the mind of the great, gurus, it is beyond this world. So if I have to use technical word, I will use the technical word here with your permission. Lokuttar chitta and lokiya chitta. Lokuttar means the chitta which is gone beyond. The mind which is gone beyond. And the lokiya chitta means the mind which is still engaged in these cycles of raga, dosa, and moha. I don't want to complicate things for you, but because these words have come and these words are very technical and we have to understand them. But even within ourselves, we can see that when we meditate, that sometimes our mind has gone beyond. It is no longer participating in the cyclic nature, the habitual energy, the habit energy that cycles everything around. When the mind is surpassed, he knows that the mind is surpassed. When the mind is unsurpassed, he knows that the mind is unsurpassed. When the mind is concentrated, now the ekaggata, the concentration of mind is very important. Because without the concentration of mind, we cannot understand anything. We cannot understand the nature of the reality. So we need to have a concentrated mind, the mind which is very much focused. The Buddha calls it ekagrata, ekagra chitta. Ekagra means like, you might have seen the peak of the mountain. Like all our energies are flowing in one direction. All our energies are flowing one direction. That is what is called ekagrata. Okay, that is called a concentrated mind. Our minds are no longer dissipated. Our minds are no longer scattered. Our minds are concentrated. So when our minds are concentrated, when the mind is concentrated, it knows that the mind is concentrated. When the mind is not concentrated, it knows that the mind is not concentrated. When the mind is released, when the mind is released, when the mind is liberated, when the mind is free, when the mind has gone beyond altogether, he knows that the mind is released. When the mind is not released, he knows that the mind is not released. Very deep, very profound, but all in the realms of practice. This is the practice of awareness. This is how we deepen our awareness, starting from the body with Vedana and mind. So let me recapitulate because it's not easy to understand. Raga, araga. Dosa, adosa. Moha, amoha. In English, passion without passion. Aversion without aversion. Okay. Then delusion without delusion. Awareness. We bring awareness. We are aware. That is what is happening in the mind. And then focused mind, loose mind. Please understand these pairs. Focused mind, loose mind, or scattered mind. Expanding mind, boundless mind, and the contracted mind, the bounded mind. It's like a bounded label. Surpassed mind and unsurpassed mind. Concentrated mind and not concentrated mind. Released mind and not released mind. So that's how we cultivate the awareness of mind. As I told you in the beginning, it's a paradox, isn't it? To be mindful of the mind itself. But that's how we can practice it. That's how we can understand. That's how we can become mindful of the mind itself. Chittanupassana. Now I'm going to read this last paragraph and I'm going to gloss over some of the very key terms there. In this way, he remains focused internally on the mind as it is. So this is how we remain focused internally on the mind as it is. As it is a very important, two words, very important. Right here and as it is. Right here at this moment, when we are practicing mindfulness at that moment. Right there, as it is. Or externally on the mind as it is. So we are also becoming aware of the minds of others. But that needs a lot of cultivation. That needs a lot of practice to be aware of the minds which are external. But that's the basis for the compassion. So when we begin to cultivate this awareness externally, it has a quality of generating that heart, softness heart of heart within us. So, to be aware of others is also very important. Or both internally and externally on the mind as it is. Now, please pay attention, very interesting. Or he remains focused on the origination of the mind. So we can actually see how the mind originates. So very profound and very beautiful, like a climax of this section. You can see how the mind originates. And as I told you, that mind is the source of all the experiences. So you begin to see how all the experiences arise. Whatever experiences there are, you begin to see the origin of the mind, origin of all the experiences. The Buddha even goes on to say that you begin to see the origin of the world. Within this body, you begin to see the origin of the world, how the world originates. It's a very profound sort of a statement. He remains focused on the origination of mind or on the passing away of the mind. So mind originates and it passes away. The mind originates and passes away. Please, read it again and again to get at the grips of it. or on the origination and passing away with regard to the mind. It originates, at the same time it's passing away. So origin and passing away are the sides, two sides of the same coin. So when something arises, something passes away at the same time. It's a very, very deep teaching of the Buddha. So we have to understand it at that level, or on the origination and passing away with regard to the mind or his senses. Now please pay attention. Or he senses that there is a mind. So he senses that there is a mind is maintained just to the extent of knowledge and remembrance. So we have to have some awareness, some grounding that there is a mind. So we have to acknowledge the existence of the mind. We cannot become abstract. We cannot just let our imagination go astray, our experiences go astray. So we have to have some sense that there is a mind. Why? For the sake of knowledge and remembrance. But we remain independent, detached, and does not take up anything in the world. This is how a monk remains focused on the mind as it is. Very profound. We think that these are few lines, but if we study them deeply, we begin to see how deeper they go, how subtle, how the beautiful way of talking about the reality that the Buddha experienced. As we know that Dhyanacharya Nagajiva expresses his tremendous gratitude to the Buddha. Why? Because the Buddha has shared the path he himself used for awakening to all of us. And that path is available to us to practice. How grateful we should be. And this concept, like there is a mind is maintained. So we maintain some sense of mind. We are not like that we are losing our minds, or we are going, haywire. We just notice that there is a mind. We just acknowledge that there is a mind, but we remain independent. We remain detached, and we does not take up anything in the world. This is how a monk remains focused on the mind as it is. So we have to have some knowledge and sati of mind. Remembrance can also means sati, smruti. So we have some smruti of mind, some knowledge of mind, but we also remain independent, detached, and does not take up anything in the world. So I am going to read these 4 paragraphs very slowly, and you follow the kind of the book that you are having. The mind and it, O monks. How does a monk observe the mind as it is? Here, O monks, a monk with passion, he knows the mind is with passion. Without passion, he knows the mind is without passion. With aversion, he knows the mind is with aversion. Without aversion, he knows the mind is without aversion. With delusion, he knows the mind is with delusion. Without delusion, he knows the mind is without delusion. So 3 pairs. Okay, we have to become aware of the mind like that. Then when the mind is in focus, he knows the mind is in focus. When the mind is loose, he knows that the mind is loose. When the mind is expanded, he knows the mind is expanded. When the mind is contracted, he knows that the mind is contracted. When the mind is surpassed, he knows that the mind is surpassed. When the mind is unsurpassed, he knows that the mind is unsurpassed. When the mind is concentrated, he knows that the mind is concentrated. When the mind is not concentrated, he knows that the mind is not concentrated. When the mind is released, he knows that the mind is released. When the mind is not released, he knows that the mind is not released. So we have seen this 5 ways. Focused mind, loose mind. 5 pairs. 5 pairs. 5 pairs. If you want to make a matrix, 2 columns. Focused mind, loose mind, scattered mind. Expanding mind, contracting mind. Surpassed mind, unsurpassed mind. Concentrated mind, not concentrated mind. Released mind, not released mind. Okay, so we cultivate our awareness like that. And the final paragraph, in this way, he remains focused internally on the mind as it is, or externally on the mind as it is, or both internally and externally on the mind as it is, or he remains focused on the origination of the mind, on the passing away of the mind, or on the origination and passing away with regard to the mind. You know, we can become aware of this simultaneous happening of the origination and passing away. It's happening all the time, even now. Or he senses that there is a mind, is maintained just to extent of knowledge and remembrance, just to, have some ground, some memory of mind. Otherwise, we will lose the great focus. And he remains independent, detaches, and does not take up anything in the world. This is how a monk remains focused on the mind as it is. As it is. The body as it is. The Vedana as it is. The mind as it is. So now you see that, this Satipatthana Sutta is so profound and so practicable also. We can all practice it. We can all start with counting the breathing, becoming, cultivating the awareness of breathing. When we have practiced enough cultivation of breathing, then we follow the breathing, then we let the mind settle on one point, focus our mind, then we scan our bodies, we become aware of our postures, to detach our mind from the lustful desires. We practice this meditation on the 9 corpses, 9 stages of the corpse, as to how our body decays. Then when our minds are very, very subtle because of these practices, then we can begin to observe the Vedanas. So pleasant Vedana as pleasant Vedana, painful Vedanas as painful Vedana, neutral Vedana as neutral Vedana. And we begin to see how they give rise to Raga, Dosa and Moha. And when we cultivate the awareness of mind, we begin to see whether our minds are full of Raga or Araga. Like that, we carry on with our mindfulness, and ultimately we become aware. If our mind is free, released, we are aware that my mind is now free. My mind is now aware. My mind is expanding. My mind is pure. How deep and how it accessible to all the human beings if they practice. It's a wonderful, wonderful teachings of the Buddha, that if we begin to see, if we begin to study, that's why Dhyanacharya Nagajiva says that please read Sutta. Please go on, read the Sutra again and again, meditate. He says twice in a day, day and night. If you cannot do for more times, just do for once, but do it. Don't think that one day you will sit for the day long and every problem is gone. No, it's not going to happen like that, ever. We have to make meditation as a part of our life, as the way of our life. And then we begin to see how this mindfulness becomes our best friend. So I think I will stop here for today and open up the class for any discussion or any comments by anybody. And we will end our class there. Okay. So anybody is having anything to comment on or anything to offer or anything to ask, please go on. If you find it difficult to ask, please put a question in the group to Dr. Lim so that he can also answer. The next class onwards, we are going to look at the mindfulness of the Dhamma. So actually, we are going to look at the very teachings of the Buddha and the way our mind, the mind functions. So Avnish, please.
Yes. Today we know about some mind. कि क्या है ये, थोड़ा सा इस पे समझने की कोशिश की. एक बार मैंने एक लाइन पढ़ा था. The new happens only when the mind is not informing.
The mind is not
Informing.
informing. Okay.
The new happens only when the mind is not informing.
Right. So please, you explain it to other.
That time I'm not understand, but today I little understand something is after reading the Sati Pathan. Mind is not that mind which is we are using some kind of seeing Vedana and use for any kind of thinking pattern, supernatural things. So mindfulness is not in your understanding. It is not mind. Mind is something beyond.
Mind is something beyond, Avnish, but at the same time, even when I'm talking, it's because of the mind. Even when you are listening to me, it's because of mind. Because mind is everywhere. Okay, because the mind is the mediator of all the experiences. Without mind, we cannot experience anything. Okay, we cannot function without mind. So there, the surpassed mind is the mind of the enlightened ones. It's not our mind. Okay, we have to cultivate that awareness. It is there, but we have to cultivate that awareness. It's okay. So mind.
Chittopad. One word I listen and read. Chittopad. This is a condition of mind, or
no? The chitta is originating all the time. The mind is originating all the time. The point is, are we aware of it? Are we mindful of it? Isn't it? The mind is arising and passes away all the time. So in the I don't want to go into a lot of technicalities, but in the sixth consciousness, there is a lot of production of concepts. A lot of language is there that we all use, but it happens at the level of the sixth consciousness, Manovigyan. Okay, there is a Chakku Vigyan related to eye consciousness. There is a ear consciousness. There is a tongue consciousness. There is a smell consciousness, nose consciousness, right? And there is a touch consciousness. And there is Manovigyan, the mind consciousness. So a lot of this mental proliferation. So you can actually see the chitta, arising all the time and passing away. Okay. Okay, let's not go into a lot of technicalities. So many things are there for all of us to learn. So Janardhan sir has raised his hand, auspicious hand. So let's go to Janardhan sir. Janardhan sir.
Yeah. Very good morning, Mangesh ji.
Good morning, Janaji.
Beautiful explanation of Saripatna. The thing is what I today only based on your thing, I just came to understand the neurotic desire of our mind can be classified with the three feelings. Rag is pleasant feeling. Dosa is rag. How to spell R-A-G?
R-A-G-A, which means passion. So sometimes we have seen pleasant as a yes.
Yeah. And again is a dosa. Dosa is painful. And moga is natural feelings.
No.
Yeah.
No. Please understand. It's the raga is not painful. Raga.
Hello. Hello. Hello, Mangesh ji.
Wait, unka internet, I think some problem will join.
Okay, sir.
Okay, just wait.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
See, the raga is not pleasant.
Uh-huh.
The feeling of pleasure creates raga.
Okay.
Okay, the sukhada vedana creates raga. Please understand, this raga, dvesha, and moha are created based on the vedanas, 3 vedanas.
Okay, right. I got it now. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why the Dhanacharya says that don't indulge into any vedana, sukhad vedana, dukhad vedana, or neutral vedanas. Just
I
become
see.
mindful, let go. Cultivate mindfulness.
And it arises and passes away.
It arises and passes away. Everything arises and passes away.
Okay,
You
very
can
good.
see how the mind originates and passes away.
Yeah. Now, the Satipatthana, actually, when you go in very, very deep, lots of findings actually. Okay. Just 1 time, 3 times like that, every time when you do, every day. Like, especially some of will teach us, then we'll get more ideas on that. Anyhow, thank you very much, sir. I'm so happy
Welcome, Janaji. Welcome.
Namaste
So,
to all my
welcome.
studies and brothers and sisters. Thank you very much.
So, is there any question or any comment, or should we end here today? But please read the upcoming material, because this material is very interesting, and it is actually help us to build our practice, because we actually begin to see how the path unfolds. What are the different hindrances that we face? Why our minds are not concentrated? Why our minds are scattered? Why we are full of suffering? Why it's happening? Why we are deluded? So all this is now explained by the Buddha in the 4th Satipatthana, the awareness of the Dhamma, Dhammanusati. Very interesting and very profound. So if we master this material that is upcoming, it will be of a tremendous help to practice better meditation. Okay?
Yeah. Great, sir. Great.
सर आपने 6 सेंस और 2 थिंग्स और बताया था, उनका क्या नाम बोला था आपने?
क्या बोला था?
6 senses and 2 more things.
These 5 senses are very easy to understand, right? You understand all of you 5 senses?
जी.
First understand the sense door. So 5 sense doors.
Okay.
They are like the sense doors. Okay. And the 5 objects of the 5 senses. And the 5 consciousness arising out of that sense door and the object contact. The consciousness, ear consciousness, eye consciousness, tongue consciousness, and so on and so forth. 5 consciousness. And the 6th is the manovigyan, the mind itself, mana, which integrates all this consciousness and creates concepts, thinking, language. Okay. And then there is another level of it, which is called manasa. Manasa means the experience of being self, the subject and object, external and external, me and others, I and them.
Can in the holy text, some holy text, dwat? Dwat. Concept.
Can you type it? I'm not able to hear you properly.
Okay. Dwat and dwat. Okay. And 8th one?
No. You better type what you are saying, because there is no this mind creates the impression of self and others. The mind creates the dividing line, the differentiation, line of differentiation. This is the source of differentiation. That's why Dhatu says, Jnanacharya says that non-differentiation. Very deep concept. It's not an easy concept to understand. Non-differentiation, because we are differentiating all the time. Our mind is differentiating all the time. Me and them, I and them, self and others, subject and object, internal and external. So that is called manasa. And then there is a level of alaya vidyan. Let's not go into this. These are very technical things. These are not essential for us to study the Satipatthana. Okay, Avnish?
Okay, and mindful, manasa. and
Manas and Alaya.
Alaya. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, there is so much of a material, you know, in the
Okay,
history
okay.
of in the history of Buddha, you know, the way it started from India all the way to China. There were so many masters have written so many things that, you know, if we compile the material, it will run into several storied building.
Yes.
Isn't it? It's a vast material. So many people have written, so many people have meditated, so many people have thought through things. So there is enough, but we have to take what is important for us to practice. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So thank
Okay,
you
thank
so
you. Thank
much, all of you, and see you in the next class, which I'm sure is going to be very helpful and interesting. Thank you all. Good morning to you all.
you.
Okay, the information we got about our mind in today's session is very good, also very important. So thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful teaching, and I'm waiting for your next session. So thank you once again for this teaching, sir. So today's session is over. So wind up this session now.
Okay, thank you, one and all. So thank you so much, Mangesh ji. Thank you, Jana ji. Thank you, Avnish ji and all. And Amy also joined from Malaysia. And all the SUNYATEEs, thank you so much. So see you on next Saturday. Officially, I'm going to wind up the session. Thank you.